Well, good evening. My name is Marla Jones, and I work with the Lawrence County Bicentennial Commission. Becky Skillman and I are co-chairmen, and she was hoping to be here tonight, but she was taken to another trip, so she said to give you her best. And tonight, the legacy of Dutchtown and the old Lincoln School is actually a Lawrence County Bicentennial Legacy Project. But I want to give you a little bit of a background how we got to be here this evening and share this wonderful evening with all of you. Earlier in the year, we dedicated a historic marker on the square, and I think it got Lee Hutchinson thinking, and he decided that he wanted to have something in Dutchtown that would commemorate both Dutchtown and the Lincoln School, and have that at the location of H and 19th Street. So he stopped by and he asked me how you would go about getting a marker like that. And I told him there's a couple of ways. One, you could apply to the state of Indiana and see if you could get the marker. They have grant funds available to help offset the costs. It's put into a pool with the rest of the state. But I cautioned him that Judge Andrew McWard had done that earlier in the year, and the state said that Lawrence County is entirely too celebratory. We have too many markers, and they wouldn't give us any money. So I told him it might be a rather moot point to apply to the state of Indiana. It would probably be just as easy to just buy it ourselves. He said, how much does one cost that's that size? It's a square. I said, well, for the small ones, it's about $1,500. He said, how are we going to come up with $1,500 knowing that we're not individually wealthy people? I said, well, I guess we can do what we've always done. We could have a dinner. And so the beautiful thing about living in Bedford and Lawrence County is the people like to be together. We really like each other. And you know, when you go home at night and you read about some of the things on the news, I'm always feel so thankful and blessed that we have a community like Bedford to come home to. And so this was a wonderful idea, and Lee said, who can we immobilize or join into our circle of friends? So we started talking about, obviously, we would need the Lincoln School, the PTO. The Lawrence County Museum of History has always been a very engaged group. So I just am so thankful that you folks have responded, because it's something that we just talked about. He wanted to know if we could pull it together very quickly. I said, well, we'll never know unless we try. So thank you so much for coming this evening. As far as being part of the bicentennial this year, we've done a lot of great things and tried to take our message to all 9 townships. And I hope that you've been able to participate in something along the way. It may have been a music festival. We may have been at the Covered Bridge, perhaps at one of the dinners down at Spring Mill State Park, or perhaps it was part of the torch relay. So thank you to everybody who has participated and made this very special. We still have 2 months to go. So if you still have a big fat idea that you haven't brought to fruition, the time is ticking. So we have to pull that off very quickly, but we can still do it. Now, if you call the 1st of December, I can't guarantee anything, but today we still can. So one thing I like to do when I have an audience is know exactly who we're speaking to. So I was just curious, by a show of hands, who actually would consider themselves from Dutchtown or live in Dutchtown currently? Okay, that's good. So of those folks who raised their hand, who would have lived there over 20 years? Very many? Okay. Over 30 years? Smaller number, but we still got folks. Over 40 years? Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, we'll get to 50 years now. We'll give them a whole round of applause. 50 years, a resident of Dutchtown. We still have several back there. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, maybe I should just cut to the chase. Who exactly has lived here their entire life? Is Beverly the only one? Come here, Beverly. She said she lives a half a block from where she was born. That's really quite remarkable. So, you know, as we celebrate Dutchtown and the Lincoln School, because everyone knows what a good community can do for a person, and I hope everyone knows what education can do with folks. You know, outside of your parents and your friends, education is going to determine your trajectory in life, so you need to get that one right, friends. Anyway, Beverly is all that's right with this community. She's got a loving family, loving husband. They're all pillars of this society. I know that her daughter Susan and I work very closely together, and I tell you what, there couldn't be more community spirit in that family if they tried. So I just wanted to give you this.
Oh, thank you.
Let me shake your hand.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for making our place so special. You bet. And I didn't want to conclude my part of this evening without leaving a couple thoughts for you. They'll be very brief. We have two folks. One's from Lawrence County. One is actually the namesake, or Lawrence County is the namesake of his. Gus Grissom commented when he met some factory workers, do good work. And I want you to remember that as you go through life. Whatever you're doing, just do it well, do it right, do good work. And then Captain James Lawrence, in his dying plea, said to his forces as they were under attack, don't give up the ship. I think there's a lot of times in life that things seem hopeless, helpless. Just don't give up the ship. Keep fighting. It's worth it. And tonight, I want to introduce the 23rd Mayor of Bedford, Shauna Gurgis. She's our Master of Ceremonies this evening. Thank you so much for letting me come and talk to you just a moment. Enjoy your evening.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is really my pleasure to be with you this evening, and thanks to Marla and the entire commission that let me participate tonight. We are gathered together, obviously, as Marla talked about, to celebrate historic Dutchtown and the history of Lincoln Elementary School, and what a great thing to be able to talk about and celebrate this evening. We also have some wonderful guests with us tonight. We have Lee Hutchinson and Charlie Walker, and we can't wait to hear from them. And we also are going to hear from Paul Mitchell a little bit later tonight. We have questions and answers. So as we get started, the first thing we would like to do is open with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jim Boer, who's with the Lawrence County Museum of History and the Edward L. Hutton Research Library, is going to lead us in that this time. Jim.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate that. At this time, we will have Father Rick with St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church to give the invocation. And I don't, there he is.
Heavenly Father, we've gathered here tonight as your children, worshiping all the wonderful glories that you have given us here in Dutchtown and in Lawrence County, that has been built on a foundation of 200 years of praising you. Lord, we ask you to continue to give us the gift of wisdom to pursue all those wonderful tasks that you place before us to make this world a safer, a better, a more loving community and world where we do all come together as in the tradition here of the Dutchtown people, where it really does matter to be thy neighbor's friend and to love one another as you call us to. So, Father, we thank you for this food. We thank you for this evening. We thank you for all of our neighbors and friends, that we can continue to lift up our prayers to you in your Son's name. Amen.
All right, at this time, I get the privilege of introducing Mrs. Gurgis, my sister-in-law, who is the principal here at Lincoln Elementary, and she is one of a long line of distinguished professionals and caring individuals that love this school and love this community. So at this time, Mrs. Gurgis.
We want to welcome you this evening, and I know we have some former Lincoln principals here this evening. And quickly, you would raise your hand. I know Mr. Hutchinson is here. Mr. Bowling, is there anyone else that's been a former Lincoln principal? We are glad you're here, and we welcome you. Do I see anyone else? Sorry, Mr. Mitchell, yes. right here at this head table. And so what a great legacy. And I know Mr. Hutchinson visited me my first year while I was at Lincoln, and I so appreciated him coming. So as we were meeting together and presenting and preparing for tonight, we thought it would be such a great idea to have some current Lincoln students sing some uplifting and celebratory songs for us. And we have, Lincoln Elementary is full of amazing students. Tonight, we have some really amazing students that were willing to come and sing. They don't always want to sing in front of adults, but these young ladies and gentlemen chose to do that, so we're very happy. And also, and Mr. Hutchinson is going to come, as we were meeting together, we had a story come out, and Mr. Hutchinson shared something that was really touching to me. And so we went back, and Mrs. Muncie, who is amazing as our music director, we got our heads together. Actually, she really did all the work. We asked a student to participate in this, but Mr. Hutchinson, would you mind just sharing quickly before she sings her song as to why? And she also has a picture of her great-great-grandmother, and she's dressed in the attire. So, Rihanna, you might just come stand here while Mr. Hutchinson shares what your special... Yes.
I want to backtrack just a minute. How many people here went to Lincoln School? Practically everybody. And I recognize more than half of you. The reason I asked it for this particular song was, as old as I am, I'm the only one who would remember this song. But when I was in Lincoln School back in 35, 36, 37, it was in the midst of the Depression, and everybody was broke, and men would work all day for $1 a day. You've heard this before, but it was a sad time, and many men went on the road to work, or went on the road to hunt work. And when the PTO would meet, Mom would always drag me too, up in old Lincoln on the top floor, and the PTO always sang this song of hope about their menfolk roaming the countryside looking for work. Thank you, Brianna.
Comes home, and my dream no more will roam. I will meet you and I will greet you, hold you closely, my own. Moonlit waters will sing, 'cause the tender love you'll bring will be sweethearts, yes, forever, when my dreamboat comes home. When my dreamboat comes home, and my dream no more will roam, I will meet you and I will greet you, hold you closely, my own. Moonlight waters will sing, 'cause the tender love you'll bring will be sweethearts, yes, forever, when my dreamboat comes home.
These are 4th and 5th grade students here tonight singing for you, and we're going to sing a few things from our Veterans Day program. Our theme this year is Sacrifices Made, so you might not be familiar with this particular song, but this is our theme song because we know, not just for Lincoln, but for our country, that there have been a lot of sacrifices made. So this is what our theme song is, Sacrifices Made. And we're over here.
the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Well, thank you to Mrs. Muncie and all the 4th and 5th graders from Lincoln. Can we give them another round of applause? They were wonderful hosting us this evening. So without further ado, I would like to take this moment to introduce our special guest. The first is former NASA astronaut. Are you ever former? I think once you're a NASA astronaut, you're forever a NASA astronaut, right? NASA astronaut Charlie Walker. He is one of the darlings of the Bedford community. So I just want to tell you, I'm sure you know more about Charlie than I do, but I consider him a friend. Now, I think once you meet Charlie once, he's your friend. So I'll just give you a little bit of information. He is married to Susan Flowers, who he told me was unable to join him this evening, and she sends her regrets. They have one daughter and one granddaughter. And if you don't know this, he is a graduate of Purdue University from the Aeronautical and Astronautical Engineering program. Quite a feat. It is nice to walk the halls of Purdue and see the pictures of our Lawrence County people there. It makes me very proud. He has lots of experience at NASA. In case you don't know, he worked on payload preparation and on-pad processing. He also did training for NASA with astronaut crews, and he accompanied the McDonnell Douglas CFES equipment as a crew member on Space Shuttle missions 41D, 51D, and 61B, and accumulated 20 days of experience in space. I mean, how many people can say that? And traveled 8.2 million miles. Charlie, you really have been out of this world, right? No frequent flyer miles. So we want to, let's welcome Charlie Walker. Yeah, sure. In addition, we have special guest and hometown hero, Lee Hutchinson. If you don't know Lee, you should get to know him. He has a wonderful history. I was able to cut a ribbon on the Old Stalker School a few years ago, where he used to work. But he has been a teacher, a principal, and the assistant superintendent of North Lawrence Community Schools. He has both a bachelor's and master's degree from Indiana University. He was a technical specialist in the U.S. Air Force, as well as a radio specialist gunner in the B-17 Flying Fortress in World War II. If you don't know this, Lee is a wonderful historian and an author. If you haven't had an opportunity to pick up a copy of his books, you're missing out. I encourage you to do that. And an all-around Lawrence County leader. And it's been my privilege to get to know him and learn more about our community through his eyes. So if you will join me in welcoming Lee Hutchinson. So You're good. So Lee and Charlie are going to talk to us a bit about their stories. And then if you will take a moment, you should be able to find some little note cards on your table. They're going to speak for 20 or so minutes. And then at the end, we're actually going to take questions. Marla will collect the cards. So if you have a special question you'd like to ask either one of them, I will help moderate that at the end. And we'll actually have Paul join us as well to talk about Lincoln School too. So with that, I will turn this over to these two wonderful gentlemen. Once again, if you will join me in a round of applause as they get started.
I'm just glad to be here tonight and see such a great turnout for this project that I just barely mentioned to some people, and they grabbed it and ran with it, and this is the result. So we are going to have a sign commemorating our Dutchtown and our old Lincoln School. And of course, in talking with Charlie Walker, I've known this kid since he was living across the street from us. He was born across the street from where we lived. His aunt and uncle lived the other way across the street. So the Hutchinsons and the Walkers had sort of a little enclave there. We had Beverly and her brother Gene, your Uncle Elmer, your Aunt Mary, right, and of course your parents, Kurt. I couldn't hear myself, could I?
See, you can teach an old principal new things.
He was born in Dutchtown, and he went through Lincoln School, the old school, and he went to the new school. And so I know him from that point of view, and I'm just so glad he's here in the honor of having him here with us. And he just wants to share a few boyhood memories with him. The first thing I remember about him being in grade school was the problem that he was too interested in rockets. And he was actually the leader of a gang of bottle rocket people.
Gang, that's a little strong.
That's a little strong. And this gang leader has several members of his gang here tonight. Would you bottle rocket people stand and wave at me? Where are you, Carol
I think
Ritter?
Carol Ritter over here is.
Dennis Reynolds over there.
There he is.
Well, all right. If I had an office, I'd make you report in the morning. And I remember Paul Mitchell brought him to the office several times for being in trouble. But they persisted, and you see where Charlie ended up, on top of one, you know. So, Charlie, I thought maybe you might just talk a little bit about what you remember about your boyhood, old Lincoln, Dutchtown.
Oh, my. What I remember is a community that was on the edge of town, which meant you both had a kid had the opportunity to go to a fine school, although, of course, some days, especially days there were tests, we wondered, do we really want to be here? Turned out to be okay. And then on weekends, you could run out in the fields and the pastures and down to the creeks and fish and swim and have fun. And Dennis and Carol, buddies that lived 5 blocks away, 3 blocks away. We knew each other, found each other over the few early years, and determined that we had some interests in common. And some of those interests, as you mentioned back at the beginning of the space age, today, you know, we call it, for educational reasons, science, technology, engineering, math, STEM, as a focus for young people to try to keep them interested, get them interested in science, technology, engineering, math, and all the following education and good things that might come in one's career after that. Back then, it was the space age, and beat the Russians to
Beat the Sputnik.
Put a satellite in space, put the first person in space, and of course, we imagined we could do that. We imagined that. Couldn't get anywhere close to it at the time, but hey, we could put some rockets up pretty high, and that was sufficient, and that was fun. And it taught us some positive things, too. Not only about science, technology, engineering, and math, but about teamwork. And I think about being good friends, too. But all those things and a lot more, everything from sports. There were lots. There were, honest to gosh, lots around that had some clear space, and you could go out and honestly plant some or clear some grass off and pretend it was a bag at a base.
Yes.
And you could play stickball or softball or even hardball now and then out in a couple of 3 lots in different neighborhoods, and you got together to, as youngsters, to be able to do that, have fun, and organize yourselves in a fun and worthwhile and positive fashion. And so it was a great time. It was a great time.
And you had this school, you had the elementary school, teachers who took care of you and encouraged you. And then science came into effect. We had more and more science classes.
I remember in the 2nd grade, I was at the old school, the original Lincoln, through my 5th grade, and then I was 6th grade down here. First graduating class from the new Lincoln. But I can remember my 2nd grade teacher was Miss Carlton. And we were delighted every week to get the weekly reader. Everybody remembers their weekly reader. I can remember, I don't know how it got started. I must have at some point made it clear to Miss Carlton that, by gosh, science was something I really was interested in. Now, this was 2nd grade. And I can remember she getting the stack of weekly readers at her desk on like Monday morning or whenever it was. And she looked at them and she saw there was a science article on dinosaurs. Now, I went through like so many individuals, I went through an evolution. Back at age 5, 6, 7, there was a real challenge as to be more interested in ghosts, dinosaurs, or spaceships. And I finally ended up on spaceships. But there was, at the time, I was real interested in dinosaurs. And she looked at that, and I can remember her popping her head up, and she reared up behind the desk, and she said, Charles Walker, come forward. And I thought, well, it's Monday. What did I do already? And she said, I want Charles here, our dinosaur man, to have the first issue of this, because it's got the lead article is about dinosaurs. So right away, it seems like I'd made a mark on my teachers in terms of the kind of future I wanted to lead.
Now, you were encouraged. Science was just coming into effect in the school. Suddenly, we were teaching science 2 days a week, and suddenly we had to accelerate and teach science much more. And you took advantage of every bit of that. And in the junior high, it picked up again. Junior high and high school.
Well, in junior high, when I was in, 8th grade is when we launched the first American astronauts into space. Alan Shepard and then, of course, Gus Grissom. And Alan Shepard flew in May of 61, and I was over in middle school and junior high school at the time, and I can remember not convocation, but study hall had a couple of black and white TVs in it, and we were given the opportunity to take our heads up out of the books that we should be studying at study hall and watch the history unfold as Al Shepard went into space. And that was one of those events that in my own head was clicking like, this is something I really got to be a part of.
So you were stimulated to go right on into it.
Stimulated to go on.
How did you come out of high school? Did you have a scholarship?
I came out of high school with a couple of scholarships, American Heart Society and this, that, and the other thing. And but I'd also already decided that I would apply those to Purdue University, and I was accepted. I interviewed with a few other schools, but my folks couldn't afford out of state just about anywhere. But in state at Purdue was pretty easy to help with, and I had to make my own way to some extent jobs, both here in summers as well.
But you were in on the ground floor.
But I had a couple scholarships to help along, and Purdue was a natural because that's where Gus graduated from, and where else would an astronaut want to go?
Gus worked his way through Purdue, and you just followed suit.
Yeah.
Now, as you went farther into engineering, they said you tried to get into the astronaut program. When did that happen?
Well, back to the conversation about Gus real briefly. I was very attentive, as some of the rest of us were, really interested in these national heroes, because, I mean, they all were national heroes. It's obvious. I mean, the first astronauts, first Americans to challenge space, it's a natural to some extent to idealize these men at the time it was. We weren't so forward-looking as a country as to recognize the strength of women. but so we only thought the astronauts should be men. Well, and we only gave the opportunity to train in high-speed aviation, military jet aviation, to men for the most part by that point in time. And it was judged that only the best specimens needed to apply, physical as well as technical education, and all those gentlemen at the time were military aviators or pilots, and almost all of them, I think all of them did have combat aviation as well as test pilot and engineering degrees. Well, I looked at that and I said to myself, I want to build these rockets and satellites, but if I have to spend my rest of my life flying airplanes just to hope to be good enough to become an astronaut, then that sounds like a waste of time if I wanted to design and build rockets and see them launch. So I'll just design and build rockets and be satisfied with that. Well, that was through the 1960s until we landed on the moon, and then this country decided that we're going to stop going to the moon, but we're going to build a reusable spaceship. And NASA was very open, and this was the last year or two that I was at Purdue. NASA was very open in saying, now this reusable spaceship is going to have those professional astronauts as the front seaters. They'll fly this spaceship into space, this rocket into space, and fly the spaceship back home. But behind them, there'll be seats for scientists and engineers. And a light went off in my head. I said, I am an engineer, and I like science, and I said, I can do that part. So that's when I started focusing on not only doing the science and engineering that might get to space, but also look for opportunities to go along with it. And I found one.
And so they let you go because you were a civilian who knew how to operate this equipment that you had designed.
Yeah, the angle was that NASA was interested in seeing, supporting and encouraging industry in this country to take industrial activities and investments and even factories, whether they be automated or whatever, but into space and bring back unique products that could only be made out in space with weightlessness and that kind of thing. And so I was following that path, finding those companies that might be working in that fashion and might need an engineer or scientist to go along with it. And I was focused enough in that pursuit that I found a company that really made that happen, and I got myself into a position where I could go along and do that. But yeah, it was the nation at the time was wanting to encourage the use of that new spaceship that this country was developing, the space shuttle, to do that kind of thing. And I was lucky enough with a great education like I got out of Lincoln here and high school here and Purdue upstate that I could put these dots together technically, and I could see where they might allow me to have an opportunity in there.
So basically, you invented a machine that nobody else could work, and so they took you. The first civilian.
You know, if you're not smart, you can still be cunning. So
the first civilian into space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great deal. And so, and then you, first mission. That was the first mission.
Well, that was my job all the way along.
Okay.
I trained some NASA astronauts to do some basic work, and then we convinced NASA, the company and I convinced NASA, you know, your NASA astronauts, they've got not just one thing to do, our project, they've got a dozen things to do in a few days' time up there. Now, that's not totally very efficient, and actually, you know, you did build this space shuttle to take scientists and engineers into space, so why don't you, NASA, train one of our company's engineers, the one that knows the most about this important new industry that might work out in space, as an astronaut to go along with it? And NASA said, interesting idea, let's try it. So I happened to be first out of the herd there too.
Yeah,
so.
First out of the chute to fly.
Yeah.
That was great. There's several people from Bedford went down to see you launch. They went down to see that launching. Now, how about that shuttle attached to the rocket?
How did the...
You weren't sitting on top of a rocket.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't the old traditional way. NASA was very cunning in the way they designed the space shuttle. They attached, of course, the flying machine, the winged orbiter, to the side of the external tank, and that's the fuel tank. And that's a long story as to why and how that was done, but that's what they did. And all the same, it was interesting to sit out on the launch pad. Unlike Gus and the earlier astronauts that sat right on top of the stack of the rocket, we were off the center of gravity, which meant that here's the rocket, the main rockets that got us into orbit and the propellant tank were directly over the fire pit and over the engines. We were sitting off to the side, which meant that when the rocket engine started up, but before the computer said you're good to go, check the rocket engines out on the launch pad, let them burn for 5 seconds or so, build up thrust. That meant since it was off-centered stack, it swung like this. Now, we were up 120 feet off the launch pad. That's where the astronauts sat at the top of the space shuttle in that stack up of equipment. So you sat up there and you were getting a thrilling start to this experience by feeling the thrust and the vibration and the roar. It was like 120 decibels inside the cockpit. Thank goodness we had some well-insulated helmets. And all of this is going on for 5 seconds. Meanwhile, and you feel yourself moving like this, and you're thinking, I sure hope this is part of the plan. And when you swing back to straight up and down, the main engine's fire and you're off the launch pad. So, yeah, and that just started the thrill ride. Then it's 8 minutes of riding a rocket with 4 million pounds of thrust pushing you towards space. So.
And how long did it take to get into orbit?
8 minutes or so.
8 minutes.
8 short minutes, although at the time it felt like forever.
Some of the people that went down there to see you take off said they didn't have time to wave. They went this way and you were gone.
And then gone. Well, and it was, yes, it was pretty fast off the launch pad, but it's a physics thing. You get out of the atmosphere as fast as you can to avoid all the drag and the commotion of the disturbances in the lower atmosphere. Anyway, yeah, it's off the launch pad and gone. And I got to admit something, though. I wasn't looking out the window and waving goodbye. I was a little focused on other things.
But now, when you're in space, I like the way you told the kids today about the weightlessness, no gravity, and how you operated up there. How you slept and everything else.
Yeah, that's an aspect. I'm often asked, the generic question, well, what's it like out there? Well, my response to start is, well, how long you got? Because there's a whole lot to talk about. Space is outer space, space flight is a very special thing. It's not unique anymore, but I mean, there's only been in the 60 years, almost 60 years of the space age in which we've been able to and have launched people from the surface of the Earth into that realm out there. There's only been some 550 human beings out of a world population of what? We're now more than 7 billion. So it's a humbling, special experience to be able to say you've done it. And one of the things I do even now in my retirement years is consult with some of these companies that are trying to make space tourism happen. Now that sounds kind of cheap and glitzy, but it's really, I think the more people that get a chance to experience looking at our whole planet from afar in one eyeful should have that kind of experience. I think the more people should have the experience of feeling the rocket engines shut off and that acceleration that's pushed you out there now subside, and suddenly you and everything around you are in free fall, physical term, but we use the term weightlessness. Because I tell young people, they say, well, what's that like? And I'll say, well, I can give you a very long dissertation on it, or let me just choose to give you one word. I have a synonym for weightlessness, the human perception of weightlessness: freedom. Because here we all are stuck to our seats. Stand up, you're stuck to the floor. And there's no little teeny weeny people with us today, so I'll say it. Gravity sucks. And now all of us are so used to it, we don't think twice about it. The body has evolved in it. All our habits have to do with just knowing where to put the glass down. Well, down is down because gravity's that way, and the glass sits there because of gravity. All of that changes when you get out there and you're in free fall, and suddenly you and everything else are floating. So you fly through the cabin like Superman or Superwoman. You lift enormous weights with a single, with your fingertip. I mean, it's a magical experience. It's almost like a comic book, a fantasy experience, but there you are for real, and you look out the window, of course, and you see this planet. It's just so many things: emotional, psychological, intellectual experience, all rolled into a singular activity. And those of you that have flown either commercially or have flown in military aviation or elsewhere, I mean, there's an effect that's just exaggerated a little further in spaceflight. It's called the overview effect, and it's a academically studied psychological impact of seeing the Earth from 5,000 feet, 40,000 feet, or 400 miles up. That changes us.
I only went 5 miles high.
Marvelous experience.
But yes, it would be. And you slept in the bag? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had, I was here today talking to all the kids here in elementary and at a convocation, and of course got the question, well, how do you sleep in space? Well, I start out with, I close my eyes and suddenly I go off to sleep, and there you are, just like home. Except, no, you don't lay down in a bed. There's no bed there in the shuttle, and besides, you can't lay down. Again, lay down is a gravity thing. What we do is we take sleeping bags with us. The crews take sleeping bags. You roll up the sleeping bag. It's stowed away until you need it. The cruise schedule has 16 hours of work and 8 hours sleep. So you unroll the sleeping bag, you tie it off where you designate. Now the commander and the pilot, they have priority, so they decide first where they want to sleep, and they usually get a window view. The rest of us then take second fiddle in terms of locations, but it's always you tie off 1 or 2 corners of the sleeping bag, maybe all 4 corners if you're kind of insecure to start with. You don't like floating in the middle of the air in the cabin bound up inside of a cocoon, a loose cocoon, the sleeping bag, because you let it float wherever you want it to be maybe anchored, and you float into the open sleeping bag, you zip it up around you, and you nod off. You don't even need a pillow. I mean, your head's floating on air. Sounds like a pillow commercial, doesn't it? But you're really that way. I also told the kids today, I said, the first night that you sleep, you learn the most important lesson about this. And my rookie flight, I wasn't told about this. And of course, that's the way these things go. You're not told about the really funny things. You've got to find them out for yourself, and then everybody else laughs at you that first time. I floated into the sleeping bag, zipped it up, and of course, left my hands hanging outside the sleeping bag, floating like this. I woke up in the morning, 6 hours later by the spaceship's clock, I woke up and here are these hands floating in front of me. Now, just imagine that now, kids. Open your eyes after a good night's sleep, and there's these hands floating in front of you like, huh. I'm sure there was a shock. A couple other of the rookies shocked the same way. So your first night, you learn, no, I think I'd better tuck my hands in the sleeping bag, and I don't like these shocks when I come out of a sleep reverie. So it's the best night's sleep I think I've had in a stressful circumstance. But after a launch to space, you find you're pretty tired from the stress, from the preparation, and there's a few busy things you got to do once the engine's shut off before the vehicle is stable enough to leave it go circling the Earth overnight. And you get that done, and you're pretty tired. So you sleep pretty well, and floating in the middle of the air is an interesting experience.
And of course, one little kid asked you if you saw any aliens up there.
Oh yeah, that's the other question next to the bathroom question, and I hope we're not going to talk about that. It's dinner time. But you always get that question: Did I see any aliens? And I said, the honest truth, of course, no, I didn't see any aliens, and I'll expand on that by saying, and I don't know another astronaut that has. Then I went into the universe is bigger than we can even imagine, and the nearest star is 50,000 years of travel away using the rockets we have today, and it's a big place, beyond imagination almost. And to think that, number one, anybody else that's out there has just come to this one star out of all the 200 billion in this one galaxy, it's kind of a stretch to imagine they've just happened to pick us out of that. But the other thing is that, yes, I do believe they're out there. Another alien life form, an intelligent alien life form. They're out there somewhere. But again, this universe is so big that I don't believe they've come to see us. Now, what I didn't tell the kids today, Lee, is the tag line on the end of my thought in that regard, which is, if I'm wrong, and some alien civilization has in fact decided to travel to this common yellow star in our galaxy, if they have come close to Earth, of course they're going to have made a significant trip and a big investment in it, so they've probably going to have their equivalent of radios, receivers, and television receivers picking up whatever is being transmitted from that blue-green planet down there, Earth. If they're picking up our radio transmissions, our television broadcasts, the news of the day, do you think they're really going to land
not
here?
going to come down. They're not going to come down.
The way we treat ourselves, and we all look alike compared to, green, scaly, tentacled life forms, and who knows what this alien life might look like. If we treat ourselves the way we treat ourselves, I don't think they just say, fire the engines, Captain, we'll go to the next star.
I know what you mean. It's a great thing. And anything else you got to lay on us tonight?
Oh, yeah, a lot, but we don't have enough time for that right now.
We don't have time.
Thank you for the conversation.
It's been an honor to have you here, and it's been an honor to have you people here. And we're going to turn it back over to our mistress of ceremonies.
At this time, we're going to ask Paul Mitchell to join us on the stage, and Miss Mickey and Mr. Connor are going to get seats for us. We're going to, at this time, if you have filled out a card and you want to pass those, it looks like Marla and Susan are making their rounds to gather those so we can ask our own questions. But just a little bit of information about Paul Mitchell. If you don't know, he was a 6th grade teacher, also a coach, and a principal, and just a wonderful community member. Paul is one of those few individuals that will stop by City Hall just to say hello and bring donuts, which I don't need, but are one of my favorite foods. So we are so glad that he's going to join us today so he can talk a little bit about his experience at Lincoln School as well. So with that, we'll start collecting those cards.
Pick your seat, Paul. Pick your seat.
All right.
We'll share them.
So the first question that one of you submitted this evening was, Charlie, for you. Are there any amusing or funny stories from space that you might want to share with us? So yeah, we'll share here. So yeah, any funny stories you want to share with us, Charlie?
I'm laughing already. No, that one I can't tell. Let's see. Funny stories. You should have warned me. Funny stories. Let's see. Oh, gosh. Dennis, help me. What's a good funny story we had to tell? Let's see here. Well, that's not so funny. It's interesting, but it's not funny. A mishap? Oh, yeah, I had plenty of those. Like I said, that's funny, but no, I can't tell it. We were with rockets. I think we were all pretty lucky. There's some of the people in here know the name Jack Shortridge. I don't think he's a Dutchtowner, but Jack was in our graduating class, and Jack got interested in rockets with some of the rest of us. He wasn't as I'll just say lucky now. He wasn't as lucky as the rest of us, and he got winged once or twice by a stray rocket, and he signed out of that. I think he took up baseball, but there were plenty of occasions where the rocket didn't go the right direction, and we'd sometime had to we were too young and naive, and I don't think we were honest enough to go tell the neighbors that, I just took out your trash barrel in the back because we had a stray rocket. We headed for cover, and
What did you use for propellant? How'd that rocket fly?
Oh, now we're going to talk about trade secrets, huh? Well, let's see. These kind of. Okay, I'll be really honest here, and this really isn't funny at all. Some of the things we did are now federal crimes. You know that.
Is that right?
Okay, next question.
All right. Paul, maybe you could answer a question for us. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about your memory about that championship team? We have some pictures in our program tonight. It said you were the coach. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Football coach.
Well, I think that's probably one of the great things that happened around Lincoln schools when we had these football games. So growing up down in Tennessee, and I heard about Notre Dame, how great they were. So when I came to Bedford in about 1956, I thought there's no reason that Lincoln can't be a Notre Dame. So Mr. Hudson got on the PA system one day and he said, Mr. Mitchell, would you come to the office? I thought, well, I'm in trouble. Well, I was sure enough in trouble. As I got to the door, he threw me a football. I said, what's that for? He says, you're the coach. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? He said, you don't have to worry about it because all you got to do is throw the football out, let them have a good time, and then you can bring them in. Well, that was all right on that Friday. So then on the next, we went out and I threw the ball out, and the boys and girls like Larry Dalton and Jim Colburn had little Jim. Little Jim, would you stand up? Little Jim Colburn, stand up. There's little Jim. And then we had Big Billy Brown. Billy, would you stand up? You talk. Larry Dalton, would you stand up?
All right.
Dr. Hall, you use it into that too, so you just will stand up too. Dr. Hall? Thank you, Doctor. But there's a lot of them. With all the Lincoln boys that played football, would you please stand? Those that played football.
Any yell leaders here?
Okay, now the Yale leaders, Nancy Dodd and some of those, would you please stand? There's two of them.
There's a bunch of them.
These boys and girls not only were good athletes, they were really tops. We didn't have any such things as bad ones. So I was really proud of those boys and girls, and I'm still proud of them today because they're still the tops. But I can tell you a lot of tales about Larry Dalton, and he told me I gave him 15 minutes to study his social studies study just after dinner. So I looked back there and there he sat, just wide open, looking around. So I said, Larry, get busy. We're going to have a test here in about 15 minutes. I've already got it read. I said, well, come on up here, I'll give you a test. So I picked out about 5 really hard questions. I knew he couldn't get them, but I was really surprised when he got all 5 of them. And I saw it right then. He had a photographic memory. I still think that today. So he has been a leader in the community. He's been a minister. He worked at Central Foundry. He's one of the top citizens, along with Billy Brown and Luke Colburn and Dr. Hall and many others. I could mention others. We've had time to mention them, but I don't know that one of them was any better than the others. But one of the things in the 6th grade, if you got to my class and you in the 6th grade and you didn't know your multiplication tables, well, we're going to work on the multiplication tables. So I had about 30 or 35 students in class. So maybe 15 of them didn't know their multiplication tables through the 9s. Now, they had to get that before they got out of the 6th grade, or they'd still be taking the class over. Now, those like Nancy Dodd and Dr. Hall and Morris Jacobs and several others, we had about 15 boys and girls in the 6th grade. I'm sure that each one of them that I would talk about out of that 15 probably had an IQ of over 200. And here I am, just a mediocre back here about, well, I probably had a 75. But anyway, they had to learn their exponents. Now, if you don't think that's not difficult, try to learn your exponents through the 9s. When some of them were doing their multiplication tables, they were getting the exponents through the number 9s. That's work. I couldn't do it. But I could tell them they need to do it. So they were afraid not to have that next Friday. They had to know the 2s, and after 9 weeks, they had to do the 9s. So they were very, very intelligent. So not only are those boys and girls in that class, but I was always fortunate to have good students. I could mention many more, but time doesn't prevent me to do those things, but it was great. So to teach at Lincoln School, and I had good parents, and the teachers we had here at that time, back in the late 50s, the 60s, and 70s, the best dressed faculty in Indiana was here at Lincoln School. Those teachers, those ladies, they came in dressed to the tops. I mean, they spent a lot of money on dress. Mr. Lowry and Mr. Fiskus and all those guys, myself, we all came to school with a white shirt or a dress shirt and a necktie. And as a result, we came up with the motto, look sharp, feel sharp, and be sharp. And I guarantee Lincoln School had some sharp students back in those days.
Here's another question. Actually, I think each one of you could probably answer this one. Obviously, we're talking about Dutchtown. What was your favorite thing to buy at the Indra store? Charlie, we'll start with you.
What was it?
What's your favorite thing to buy at Indra's store?
Oh, they had a big caramel holiday all-day sucker.
Microphone.
Or mini.
Microphone.
What is it?
They had a holiday sucker. It was an all-day caramel sucker. and you could get it for 2 or 3 cents. It was a biggie. And
It was 5 cents by the time my time came around. Right?
well, things were very cheap back then. Family of 5 could live all week on $5, and didn't live well, but they lived. But the store was jawbreakers and chewing gum, of course, and paraffin artificial teeth. You had to have paraffin artificial teeth.
Well, mom and pop stores were common back then. Mom and pop stores, the small little shops, Happy's, Hancock's, and Enders's, and Jingo's.
Store on every store.
Best meat in town at Jingo's.
What I wanted to say was, we've done 6 interviews with people in this community and former students, and they are fantastic. You can learn more history. This project's not over. The museum's going to keep doing this, and we're going to keep, Marla's shaking her head, we're going to keep doing this and get more and more stories, because you just can't believe what these people remember. And one of them said to me the other day, you better hurry. So, because we're all getting up there. Everybody's old except me. I don't. But if you Google Star Station Vimeo, Star Station on Vimeo, you can get all 6 of them. Maria has put them all together, and they're worth your time. If you Google on your computer, Star Station on Vimeo, it's better than what's on TV all the time, and you know these people.
All right, Charlie, here's a question for you. Someone wanted to know, how much could you deviate from your orbital and stay on course?
Deviation was not allowed. But, okay, if it was how much could you deviate from your orbit and stay on course? You really had to follow, well, first of all, the rockets put you on a trajectory governed by physics. So the conditions that you launched under, the amount of mass of the spaceship, the amount of rockets, propellant that you had on board, the direction, the azimuth that you launched into, gave you the inclination and the orbit. If the rocket worked as it was supposed to, gave you the altitude and the angle of orientation as you circled the Earth. And you had to have additional propellant in space to change that. I mean, you had to have force to change the direction of flight. The force came from onboard rocket propellant. So it depended upon the mission, and you could, if you had the mission required you to deviate the orbit, either in altitude or in inclination, that is the azimuth you were traveling around the Earth as referenced from the equator, you had to have enough rocket propellant on board. Now, all that was gauged before you went. So really, once you got up there, you either followed the plan or you came home. That was about it. So, but you could deviate an orbit in inclination or altitude to a considerable degree, but that would take a lot of additional onboard maneuvering propellant to be able to do that. So I know I haven't mentioned any numbers, but in history, for instance, Gus Grissom on his first flight in Gemini, orbital flight, one of the missions with that early American spacecraft, 2 astronauts on board, was to in fact change their orbit. They had propellant on board for that very purpose, and they changed their inclination as well as their altitude, their inclination by almost a degree or two. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes hundreds of pounds of propellant to do that to a 2-ton, 3-ton spacecraft. And they increased their altitude from something on the order of, when they entered orbit, something like 110 or 20 miles altitude to something like 180 or 200 miles altitude. So they almost doubled their altitude again with 100 or 200 pounds of propellant on board. So you could do it, but it's all variable depending on what you have with you and what your how much your spacecraft weighs. Physics. The world is governed by physics.
Okay, here's one more for you, Charlie. All right, with manned spacecraft being the future of our nation in the 50s and 60s, did you ever, quote, man, unquote, your backyard rockets with anything? And then the side note is, tell the truth, your family knows.
Okay. Yeah, that was, I'm glad whoever wrote that was, it gave me a little clue here so I couldn't deviate from the truth. Yes, it's a fact. I mean, these were scientific investigations. So our rockets, we developed the propulsion system. You know, once you design the rocket and you send it up with nothing in it except just to see if the rocket's going to fly, and you see that it works, then you're intrigued to know what might a grasshopper do and survive or not this flight. And then once that grasshopper survives, then you go down to the creek, you go down to Leatherwood and you catch a toad or a frog often, and then you keep it out of water, in water long enough to get to the launch site, and then you put it in the capsule and launch it. You see if it's going to survive. Did that a time or two, and they survived a time or two. And then, as of course at the time, this is the 1960s, so laboratories always used mice for experiments, right? Laboratory mice. Everybody knows the term. Well, I can remember that there was. I won't mention name because she's not here to take the guilt trip of selling myself and some of us guys a test subject for a rocket flight. Now, this is rocket science, and this is science experimentation. We wanted to know how a living organism would do in rocket flight. So we bought a mouse, a white mouse, put the white mouse in this rocket, and we had to give him a name. And of course, he was our first mouse in space, and of course, historically speaking, the first to explore a new world was some cat named Christopher, right? So this was, and our little group, we had a name for our little rocket group, the team of us, getting together in our own basements and with our parents' permission and assistance to do these madcap things. We called ourselves the Developmental Association of Rocket Technology, D-A-R-T, DART. Cool, right? Yeah. So this was this Christopher was a DART rocket passenger. Well, he was an experimental rocket passenger, so he was the DART experimental rocket passenger. Derp. So this was Christopher Derp. Well, Christopher Derp made the flight. Sad to say, the parachute didn't open as it was supposed to. So there was, shall we say, a rather higher than planned return speed. And as people sometimes tend to say, it's not the fall that kills you, it's the sudden stop. So we buried him on site, and I won't tell you where his grave is. It's a private secret among us. But that little rocket passenger didn't quite make it, and actually the Mouseketeer space program of Lawrence County stopped at that point. Politically speaking, it was now improper to do that any further. So I think we then built instruments.
That is a great story. I mean, thank you for whoever wrote that one down. All right, last question for everyone, because I know we're running a little short on time, but this question asked, and all three of you are welcome to answer this. Did you have anything fixed or made at the Dutchtown blacksmith shop?
Well, what we did, the blacksmith shop was that was my entertainment, was watching them bring in the horses and shoe the horses and melt the iron and pound it and the steam would roll and the smoke would roll. And we've done a wonderful interview with Gene Abel about his dad and granddad. But that blacksmith shop was a very busy place. And what I learned there a lot was learn how to cuss and learn and the entertainment of watching them. And it was just a small business in 1938, 40, 42, and extended right on into the fact that Marshall was such a good blacksmith, and blacksmithing was going out, that Indiana University did a survey on him, and it's on film with WBIW. And so the blacksmith shop was very important to me, because it was just across the alley from my house. I could sit in our barn and watch you guys work.
I don't have anything. I didn't shoe horses.
Yeah. Before your time. Paul, do you have anything to add to that one?
Pardon?
Do you have any memories of the blacksmith shop?
No, I think it was gone before you got there.
All right.
But I mean, it was down, you know.
All right, Lee, I guess you're dating yourself.
Yeah, I think that, well, when Central Foundry came in, Marshall went to work at the Central Foundry. And so that kind of, then it became a part-time business.
All right, well, since, any other final comments from any of you gentlemen as we just wrap up tonight?
I just want to tell people that the museum has brought all this stuff in to see. Danny brought in a film of the football guys, if you guys haven't seen that one, back on the wall. And as I said, we're going to continue to correct in history. If any of you want to be interviewed, we might try to handle that. But this history is just fantastic for this area. Bedford in a whole, Lawrence County, 3 astronauts. No other county in the United States can say that. And there's something about this area that breeds knowledge and a quest for knowledge, perhaps. And what he said to the kids today should be said to kids all over the country. Have a goal and stay with it.
Paul, you want to say anything?
No, I guess not.
Oh, come on. Go ahead, Paul. I'm going to say a few things to finish.
I'm a better listener than I am a talker. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, you heard it. Sometimes.
Paul's our top ticket salesman. He's the guy that sold 40-some tickets.
I've said to many of you tonight already personally, but I want to say it again to you and to everybody else. Thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you for spending a night of your valuable time and some of your hard-earned bread to come be a part of honoring Dutchtown, honoring yourselves and your families and your heritage here. Thank you for recognizing that we all live in as Lee said, I recognize this as a special place. I mean, the opportunities that just came out of the family relationships, the positive group think that was a part of our Dutchtown and part of Bedford overall. It was a great inspiration, whether I didn't really realize it, and it only comes to, I think, into some of our heads until later in our life, how special our upbringing is and the places where we grow up and the people that we grow up with and around. And I am a big one for oral histories and for remembering where we came from out loud and in front of a camera or in a recorder, because yea, verily, we tell our families lots of these things, but then they don't repeat it, and it gets lost. And yet, this part of America needs the kind of American culture, the United States of America's Midwestern, Southern Indiana family and culture needs to be set down. And hey, I think we need to teach a few more parts of this country about what it takes to be a real citizen and a real person. And you guys, you folks, all of you, your families and yourselves are perfect models for great people. Thank you all very much for being a part of this.
Thank you. Yeah. Charlie, we want to thank you for making the trip and joining us today. And for Lee, always being, your stories are wonderful. I love to hear your stories. And Paul, thank you for joining us tonight as well. If you all would join me one more time in a round of applause for these three gentlemen. Yeah.